So ideally, all right, so we're getting into now performance measure quadrant sheet for those of you who are joining us later. And we're just going to go over, I'll go over the one that sort of filled out first, just to 1 hour left. It's so sad how quickly the time goes away. All right, so measures and then how well is anyone better off? So these are not all created equal, right? And so how much is, in the scheme of things, the easiest to collect? It's the most reliable. This is a head count. This is acres. This is something that probably in most times in the United States was irrefutable. But given our current political climate, even facts don't actually add up. But we're going to just go with these are the easy ones. This is number of hours, number of people, number of classes. It always involves a number of customers, so a head count, or an acreage count or something, whatever you've defined your customer as, and an activity. So the number of activities, it's a twofer, right? You may have some other things that you also take a look at in terms of resources or cost per unit or something like that. But usually the best ones are the people served and what you did to, with, or for them.
Quick question about this in regards to a lot of how much when we're looking at like running events, I try not to put it on. Like I want folks to look at how many people are coming to their events and evaluate it, but I don't look at what we're putting in their agreements as number of people attending. I look at number of events being held and offered. Okay. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And does it matter to you if it was only one person or 300 people?
I mean, it matters, and that's kind of like where the quality stuff comes from. But as far as like their effort in how much, I see that as being different than like population level influences that influence whether or not people can go to an event on a specific day.
Yeah. So I think it's probably important to track the number of events and the number of people. It's my first reaction. Just again, otherwise you don't. Now there also may be like the length of the event, right? So is it a 1 hour event or is it a 4-day event? And so that also has a sort of a qualifier of how much has happened. And part of this helps you look at different programs to understand, again, to not overuse it, but to overuse it. Is it a wide strategy or a narrow strategy? If it's narrow, is it deep? So there's a big difference between putting on a conference and putting on a speakers bureau one night a week for a month, and you don't do much and people just show up, right? There's a different level of attention and impact that you would expect from that, and a different cost price that's attached to that.
But it still doesn't get to, like, I see the conflict in there.
That's just, it's understandable because it's irrefutable, right? So when they're reporting up to the feds or the legislator, they can say, we know this is how many people and how many events there were. Don't ask us, the other stuff is mushy, right? And
well, and plus sometimes you have to touch something.
The easiest, it's where most of us have resided most of our lives, and it's in the comfort zone. The next level that happens often is, oh yeah, this isn't enough. Like, so tell me about the quality of it, right? So the next one is how well did we do? A common measure is often customer satisfaction, because that's where we often default to, because again, we're often serving folks, and part of the indication is would they come back? Did they feel respected? Did they feel included? Like what's that level of satisfaction about? That is not necessarily saying that they've learned anything or changed their behaviors, right? So it's a little gray. And I would say if you have a better way of measuring other than customer satisfaction, that might be a place to go, especially when you're working with the unwilling or the mandated, right? So if someone's been told they have to be there, or they feel like it's a voice, they're going to be unhappy regardless, right? So it's not necessarily a reflection of your work. And I think I may have used this example last year for those of you who are parents. Anybody here parents? All right, so parents, are your kids always happy with you? No. And is it not true that when your kids are unhappy with you, you're probably doing your best parenting? Maybe, sometimes. Sometimes. So satisfaction is a tricky little a place. And so the thing, if you're going to do a measurement on customer satisfaction, being specific as to what you're asking their satisfaction about. So were they treated in a timely, were they brought into the services in a timely fashion? Were they respected? Things like that get kind of more concrete. Other common measures that are on here are listed. Wait lists, completion of programs is often an indicator. A referral quotient is often so the net referrer quotient is an interesting one, which is those who would say yes on a scale of 5, 4, or 5 that they would refer you, minus the ones who are negative, get you to that quotient. That's one that's often used. So there's all sorts of things, and really what you're trying to get at here, this is the stuff that you control. So this is a reflection of how you delivered, when you delivered, how you delivered, where you delivered your services. So it might be, was the location right? Was the food good? Did we stick to the schedule? Again, was it timely? So those are things that you can control.
When you say timely, I see.
Deal. So what we'd like to do, we'd like our process from beginning to inclusion to be this many days, the percentage of applicants who completed within that time.
Okay.
And thank you for noticing that. There is RBA is very specific. How much do we do is always a number. It might be $1. How well did we do it is always a percentage. So it's a percentage of the whole that met that criteria. So it's the percentage of clients who were satisfied with our services on a scale of 1 to 5 out of 4 or 5, right? So it's very concrete and measurable, and it's always a percentage of the whole. What's interesting about this on the whole is sometimes you have to tweak your denominator. So if you have a pool of clients and then there's a subset of them that get specialized services, so there's an intensive service for them, for instance, you don't want to do the results on that subset on the whole. You're going to want to say, so we have sort of two strategies here. We have our general programming, and then we have our special folks. And those special folks get extra treatment and extra advice and help and what have you. And you want to make sure that you're measuring the results on them as a different pool. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And maybe you don't have that circumstance, but often that happens in programs. And then we get to the hardest part, and of course this is also the one that's most important. Is anyone better off as a result of the things that we're doing? Hardest to measure and the most important, and it's often an afterthought, and it's often a place that we are reluctant to claim, right? And we're reluctant to claim it because sometimes it feels arrogant to say we're responsible for that, given that lives are complicated and there's other people working in the field with us and all that stuff. And so really understanding your theory of change and what you think your impact is, you get to claim it here. You don't have to go into it with arrogance. You can say, and we did it in partnership with so-and-so, or we know they have a life and these farmers are wonderful and they had the willingness to do it, but we're going to claim the part where we can claim, right? And so it feels a little awkward sometimes, right? And this is always rooted in a number and a percentage. And this helps also get to the breadth of your work and the impact of your work. So you could say, we had 100% success on changing the skills of this person. And if you go out in public and it turns out that you served one person, you might get some flack. So this is about being really transparent in the effectiveness of your work and owning your theory of change. Again, we go wide or we go deep. We usually don't do both, and naming it and claiming it. If it's one person and you worked with them, 24/7, 365 days a year, well, name it. That's our work is that intensive, and we only have me, and I can only live with this person that long with one person. So that's our strategy. Probably none of you have that strategy, but it's always a number and percentage, and it always involves a change in skills and behavior, skills, knowledge, attitude, opinion, behavior, or circumstances. So as you're crafting your measures, if you get stuck, I often use this as a checklist. Okay, am I trying to change a skill or some knowledge? Is there anything there that I might be able to claim? Is it really opinion? Is it part of that system change of thinking about attitude shifts so we can get to the next one? Is there a strategy about just opening someone's eyes to the issue and getting them even curious about what might be a solution, right? That might be one layer of what you could measure. The next one is, once your eyes have been opened and you have an attitude shift, are you willing to consider a behavior change? The next one is, I actually helped them make a behavior change, right? So you can look at it sort of sequentially in your theory of change as well. So any questions on sort of educational settings or behavior changing settings? We don't have them to do that whole time. What we have them for is the point where they are committed and they've made a commitment, sometimes that's all we've got. You know, if you're lucky and you can follow up a year later and say, did you follow up? Great, but many of us don't have that capacity. So we're working on a theory of change and a sort of human behavior understanding that says the first step to taking action is deciding to take action. And that's what we're going to base our results on, because that's when the window of time we have them. But don't constrain yourself from the measurements. Like, if it was a perfect world, what would you like to know? What would you like to know? And let's see how close we can get to it, right? So we have lunch is